All right, what's going on, everybody? We're looking at November 6th. I got two devices in front of me today. One of them, very familiar, Push 2. Somebody may have these at home already. Some of you, where Move, the device I've been talking about a lot lately. In the Move world, the workflow running this way, in Ableton, hey babe, if I start making clips, basically session view would go this way. So already, like, the differences are pretty apparent. And I started talking about the step grid, and that's what I'm going to talk about today, because depending on if I'm in session or note, right, those are the differences between this button here in the Move and your session and note buttons here in the Push. So in Push, if I'm in a drum kit, I can see if I pick a drum, basically that's what you're seeing in the grid above it. And in Move, the grid for step is below it. So that's something that is a little different when you're looking at it, is that the grid for Move is down here and the one for Push is up at the top. The number of bars is right here, and I got 2 bars I'm running through here. And if I turn this on, I'm going to go to a new set. But like if I hit play, and I had, I'm just going to put a trigger and I'll take it away in a minute. So that's 1 bar, and if I add 2 bars, you can see it in the screen up here, right? I know it's harder to see for everybody online, but 2 bars, 2 bars, and then again you touch any of the drums you would want, and then input into the grid, and that's how Push works, right? So step grid's up top. Move, the grid's on the bottom, and if I would touch a note and put a couple notes, you would see that's 1 bar. That's the 3rd bar. Oh, I accidentally did 3 bars. Right, and you have a button here that's the number for the bar. So that's what this little loop guy does, is it can shorten the bars. With the bars themselves, if you push this arrow, you add more. In the Push, if you wanted more, you would I would drag my finger across, so now you can see there's 4 lit up, and then you would, like, as you would see it going in the Push, the lights flip. Yeah, you see, so you're on the back side. And then if you want to go back to the the front side or the back side, depending on how you're programming it, you could see as it's running, like, what side it's on, right? So it's nice because graphically you see it there. Here you would see it up in the screen. So like where these 2 bars are right here and here, that's where you're actually seeing it in the Move. So the other thing I've been hearing a lot of people talk about, it's not weird, but like right now the other thing is the way the notes are laid out. So the grids themselves, like, let's talk about the grids, because some people have been talking about the way the grids are laid out and what they do and don't like. So in this one, if I had a piano, which that is not, sorry, okay, so here is that, right? And then on this one, I try to load it as well. So when you're looking at the 2 grids, there's a pretty big difference, because that's the scale. It's basically that quick. Here, and they're not loaded the same scales. I know I'm on Bavarian here. Let me see if I have, I know I should have it here. Scale, right? And we would just look up Bavarian, Or Barave is what I play a lot, I guess is what that's called. Sorry, Barave. I might have a different pronunciation. I'm probably wrong. That, you know. Right. And a lot of times that's in the center of D, so I'm going to say scale D, because that's what I'm playing over here. And now, so here you're like forced to play it, you know, this way. And when I go chromatic, that's when it feels like it's clustered that way. Where here it's just constantly clustered that way. If they allowed this grid to be broken into fourths, and do you see up here inside of your push, you actually have fourths, thirds. You know, if you did sequent, that is the way that this is laid out when I go like that in key. It's like that way. So you can mimic on the push what they do on the move, but vice versa, I can't on the move go back to fourths. And that's the way we're pretty much used to using it. If anyone has ever owned a push before, the grid itself feels like it's laid out a little easier in how you can run a scale. So if I ran a scale and I was like, here, that same scale, my hands have to both be on it, because I can't, you know, that's kind of, it's hard to do a run with one hand on the move, because it's all 8 in a row, and you're almost like forced to use 2 hands. The other thing is comping here is a little easier, because you know, you have your lower register on the side of the move or of the push here, and you have your upper register you could play on this side. You know, where here, if they broke it down in fourths, there could be a possibility for this to be shifted an octave outside of this side, you know, and I'm not saying they're going to do that. On the Discord, we've all been talking about that. There should be a way down here, one more step, to say fourths or thirds, or like the way this says it in the push. So I think that's a comment, and if anyone's in the Discord or is voting up any feature requests, I think that's a big one in the move world, that if you had the fourths, you know, it might be a little bit easier to do scales with one hand. That leads me to tell you guys about chords too, because a chord cluster here is very simple. It's just like the quickest, you know, cluster of notes, which is, you know, like a triad. Here, not that it's bad, but did you see, like, my hand almost has to stretch? You almost want to use 2 hands to do it too at the same time. And that's what's becoming something that I'm noticing in the grids between both devices. So today's stream, we're talking about move and we're talking about push and the differences. I'm talking about the way that the grids are laid out, and the grid layouts, and how you can play chords a little different on each one. A lot of us on the forum are talking about, you know, the differences and you know, what is really nice about the differences. And I always tell people, you know, until you have your hands on both, it's hard to know that doing a whole scale up this one, it's a little tougher and to get the groove on this one, I would say. It's not as compacted. Now, making music on the drum grid, though, I'm more used to the step sequencer being close to me than being up above me. And I understand here, because you want the pads to play on in front of you and the amount of time and the grid, that makes like tons of sense. But when I get here and I see this grid in front of me, it's what I've been used to forever, and what, like on Electron Box or on a Roland drum machine, or any of the clones, it's you're used to the grid being in front of you. So I would say, like, the differences in the grids, I'm going to say that's definitely part of using the devices. If I, you know, laid out a house pattern, it's just the same ease on both devices. You know, nothing's harder. The screen here, of course, makes it nicer for like, oh, I know what my parameter is. Here, we just simply touch. You just touch one of them, and you'll see it on the screen what the parameter is. The elegance of understanding once you use the drum rack and a different synth, you kind of start knowing where the knobs are, just like any synthesizer. Like when I start using my OPField, I start understanding like, oh yeah, that's where that sound is. Now, someone the other day mentioned a comment, and it was that this thing gets choked out, or the polyphony, or we were talking about different things about this, where of course, like, with Ableton, you have as much polyphony as you kind of want. You know, there's not like a limitation on, oh, I only get so much polyphony with Ableton, until your computer doesn't like it anymore, right? Now, on the Move, from what I understand, it can be all 64 tracks, and as we're talking about these grids, that's what we're talking about today, the step grid in Move, the step grid in Push, the differences between the two, what's similar. Similarity, of course, you're on a grid. This is broken down into chunks of 8 and never gets broken down like a 16 chunk. And that's something for me that, again, it is preference. It's what people like, but I'm used to having 16 steps in front of me, and sometimes breaking it down into 8. It did take me a minute to get used to my Digitac. Like, I'm going to say that right now. Like, the Digitac from the Octatrack was a little bit of a jump. And I would say that's another big difference between the two devices. You're looking at an 8-step grid on a Push all the time, and you're looking at a 16-step grid on Move. Now, that's not to say they can't be divided into like quarter note 16. Like, you have your grid resolutions here, you know, on this side, and you can see the grid changes when I change the resolution. Here I have grid resolution when I do shift 3, step of the grid. So resolution's available on both devices, so that's similar. But the difference is this has to be broken down into chunks of 8, and this can be broken down into chunks of 16 in front of you. So more like a old school TR sequencer, the 8-step grid is more like Monome, or, you know, if you're used to something newer, something a little more modern. The other one is Launchpad Pro. You know, I use a Launchpad too because it goes into a book bag and I don't break any knobs on it. So when you're thinking about what's similar and what's different, Move, of course, can be standalone. Unless I had Push 3, I could be standalone, yes. This is Push 2. I'm talking about the step grids, what's kind of similar and different. Chunks of 8, chunks of 16. And then the limited voicing, of course, in this. Now, there's another huge difference that I can't tell everybody enough, that I wish here, when I touch a drum, I can't make, like, if we did like layout, right, velocities, macro variations, pads, loop selection, right, that's the choices I have here. But the advantage to using a Move is very different, because I could go into a sound and play it in key like a keyboard, where they don't have that on the Push. At least from Push 2 they don't. And I would say that feels awesome if you're someone who's making like a tom, because, you know, on the grid I can actually pick a different, oh, sorry, there's like something on there. I can pick different steps. That's what I do with my hi-hat trick a lot. Like, I pitch them. And here, I'd have to do that on a knob with like an automation, or I'd have to go in and play with Ableton to change that. You don't have the pitch ability here that you do over there. You can't just pitch out something. So, and that's with snares, with weird hits, claps, you know, you can pitch them. Here, I would have to actually go in and somehow either find pitch or, you know, change it inside of the software. So another huge difference is what they call here pitches on in the drum racks. You don't have pitches on in your Push 2 with the drum racks, right? So, right? And that's really cool too. If you make noise music, house music, glitch music, I notice a lot of times with house, I do these cool things where you're like, or drum and bass. Like, what if we were going to make a drum and bass track, right? and we were getting into it, maybe a little more like hardcore, and I had something going, right, and we were gonna like double. Let's see if I can make this a little cooler. So ready? Example of like taking chords on the grid too, and why here I couldn't do the same exact thing, you know, like I couldn't do the same exact thing on this as quickly, I think, as I can here, right? Now I just kind of goof around and throw random triggers. See how fast and pitching it, how fast that happened, right? We're talking about the grid and the differences. Now, if I wanted to do the same thing here on the push, the other difference is I actually have to have access to a couple things. Like having tracks loaded is another big thing. Like having the tracks kind of ready to go, you know, on your device is big. So if I had like a piano, a bass, like the 4 channels here are ready to go. So like on your push, you have to, in Ableton, you would also have to have everything ready. Like everything would have to be in place. You'd have to have your 4 tracks like ready to go, you know. And so now like I'm going to emulate that real quick for everybody because I want to kind of show how this would actually unfold. It's kind of crazy because you would have to have the 4 tracks ready, right? Which now I do. I have 4 tracks, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, I would hurry up and have to program my tempo like I did over here, you know, and on the grid real fast. So I have it, right? And then really quickly I go to my next channel. And this is a little lower, sorry. But like, no, you know, there. Throwing on an effect. See, it already feels like not clunkier, but like, I almost have to get involved with the software. I know a lot of people jump through push pretty fast, but I still use, you know, if I go to delay, I go to grab the mouse, you know. So I would tell everybody, like, I'm still not, the workflow here, I'm a combination of mouse and machine, where here, when a track loads, effects are on it, or you can load your presets that have the effects you want already. Now here, if I was a little more prepared, I should have been, I could do that. Now, when we're working, the session button here and the session button here, right? The grid's laid out this way. It's horizontal, you know, where this is vertical, you know. So like the grid, every time we make another clip or I start working on something, if I was on this channel and I went back to note and I was going to record. Hold on a second. And hold on a second. Yeah, because I'm running everything through Ableton, even my microphone, right? And that would record me. I still haven't found a way to do live music with a push attached, meaning multiple microphones and not accidentally record on a bunch of stuff. But the difference is the way the grid's laid out, right? And then between note and session, if I go back to note, as long as I'm on a track with drums, you guys can see they're pretty similar, right? And picking the drum selects what you see on the grid, just like you see in both. So that's very similar between the two. Playing a chord over here, you know, isn't much different, you know, because I could go over to the piano, I can change layout, right? And if I was seeing the sequencer here, you know, and I had notes laid out, I could see them. I could even be laying it slower so we could actually, you see what I mean, like see it, right? And so that's another way that this can't show you the melodic sequencer. So there's you know, a couple differences in that as well. You know, and then when I go back to note mode, I was talking about this earlier with everybody. This mode is what we've been kind of requesting, because when I'm here, again, I have to play that. It's harder to play the scale because I have to use both hands. So the layouts for the notes are a little different. You can change that when you hit, what is it? Is it layout? No. Is it scale? Yeah. When I hit scale, thirds, sequent. So sequent is how this is laid out. So you can make this play like that. All right, when we're talking about the grids as well, what I also like here, and I was kind of exploring that yesterday on the grid for Move, is a lot of times when I'm making music and, you know, I was working on a track, I'm going to change the kick drum because I just want it a little more broken beat. Yeah, so now, say we're working on a track. Playing those chords in the rack too, you know. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Is if I play chords from a drum rack and I make up a chord progression and I'm not sure what it is, you actually have to go to scale and start playing with what scale you think fits over top of the chords you played out of the rack. And a lot of times that's kind of where I search to do, like, you know, something easy, but still doesn't sound quite right. The other thing you could do is what? You could say chromatic, right? So a lot of times here for me, I would go C, and then I would just say, you know, major. So now we could kind of know where we're at. No. Chords here as well is like if I hit a note and I played a cluster. And then length, if I hold it down, did you see it brings up length? So, and you can see the light starting to glow. So the intuition here is kind of easy. You know, that's terrible, but you know, I'm just messing around. Talking about the grids, talking about some of the differences in the grids, right? And what we're seeing is here that I could do a cluster of notes as long as I had the layout correct, I believe, which would be like this. Right? No? Not going to let us? Yeah, so I'm not sure how these layouts quite work. I haven't used, the idea that I use the sequencer in the Move is actually, or in the Push, is I use it connected to Ableton all the time, right? So what I'm looking at is a clip. Once we get something recorded here too, let's say what would happen. If I was looking at what's going on here, you have clip, right? And like my kick drum, I started working on a drum beat, you can see all my notes up here. So typically what we're doing is we're cutting clips, we're looking at the layout based on that. When we see what the clips we're doing and how they're cut, kind of gives us a really good idea of like what's happening in real time. When I look at this grid, very similar, and this is what I was talking about, you touch a note, you look at the grid, here, same thing. I got it set really crazy. That's 16th note, just like this now. That's called grid resolution. So on Push, resolution is set up here. On Move, your resolution is built into Shift 3, right? And that resolution is how those grids are cut up. All right, so kind of, you know, maybe I should show you guys one more time a little bit of how I'm creating stuff inside of Move and the grid itself, and you know what happens. The other thing I did the other day that I found completely interesting, and I don't know how, like, not legal, but I was working on the way that feel and chopping things inside of Move works. And what I did was I took some samples from the 1940s. Because I figured, if anything, those might be a little bit outside of the realm of me getting in so much trouble. So I'm going to turn this down. And let's see, a little too low. I was sampling all kinds of stuff, so I don't want to get in trouble with like copyrights or anything, but okay, so very good example of a sample from the 1940s, right? So I took a sample from the 40s and I it's like a big band sample because I like the horns. So if we were making some kind of lo-fi thing, kind of what I was going for, right? So we're talking about doing sampling, we're talking about the grid, maybe some of the differences between Push and Move. And in this example, I'm going to show you guys how I lay pitch samples on the grid, which I wish I could do here with the rack. I wish you could hit Shift 16 pitches. They don't give you that option here. So talking about one of the big differences in the grid and how things get laid down. And then now, if I made a beat, so now I'm going to just make something quick. I'm going to pick a tempo that's not so fast. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to cut the groove in half. So let's see. So maybe something a little more like on that lo-fi hit, right? And then I go to the samples from the 40s. So let's see. And we're looking at the grid. The grid is telling us what's happening. 1, 2, 3. We see the lights. So what happens intuitively on the Move, and this happens on Push as well, right? Because what happens when the grid's moving? What do we see? Right? We see it moving, right? So each grid's going to tell us that, right? And here, I want to take that chop sample from the 30s. So I'm going to lay it there. And 2 pitches, right? Let's see what note that is too. I'm checking what note. It might be a little detuned as well. That's okay. Alright. Alright. And this is the fun in taking samples. Haha. Let's see. pitches on this side. On push, I don't have the ability when I hit a note to change that pitch right next to it. So that's kind of one of the other big differences that, you know, maybe next update of push, we'll see more similarities to what's happening with move as well. But 16 pitches, using the step grid, being in front of you, not being away from you, some major differences, you know. So I really appreciate everybody watching, because me sharing some of these differences helps people determine whether they're going to spend money on move or push. A lot of times that's a lot in a studio, because if you don't have much gear and you're only going to pick one thing, you know, what would you do? You know, now the great thing is this could be used as a Ableton controller as well, and it can look very similar and can do the same things that we can do here. But what I found was when this is in controller mode, you actually get the pitches too. And that to me was a really, really big deal. Okay, so I was like kind of surprised that, you know, once this gets into the Ableton world, I like that the features of move, the pitching, that, because that's how I make my favorite music, is cutting things up, pitching it down, putting it on a grid, making some accidents, and then I'm like, wow, I really like that, you know. The accidental song I made yesterday with working on the grid, and I'm probably going to be able to share this because no, it's this one. So this is a great example of a sample I took, and I wanted to develop the sample a little bit deeper, and this definitely comes from the 1940s as well. So a lot of the sampling I've been doing lately is from a long time ago. And what I came up with was that. That's it. Okay, so I made a whole song based around this one sample. I'm going to mute these channels. So, and this is how I made my rhythm. I basically took that sample and laid it on the grid and let the swing of the sample guide my beat, right? This is how it turned out. So let's take a look. Look how busy that grid is, right? Because I did so much step stuff, right? So this is a bass line, and when you're playing in move, it shows you all the notes that are playing, which is, I find, awesome, right? So it kind of tells us what we did, right? I'm gonna go back up. Sorry, I wanted to talk real quick, talk about the grid. Another very busy moment on the grid. Now, let's talk about me acting like this has more than 4 tracks. What I end up doing too, and this is because you have more than 4 tracks here, you have to somehow figure that out by stacking within an instrument. So in my electric piano, I play a part down here, and then I jam over top of it on the next octave. So I would keep in mind too that if you feel like you're ever running out of voices on move, you could basically play, and it's crazy because when I touch a step, do you see how you can see what notes are on every single step? So the step grid's really awesome because if I hold down a step and I don't know what notes are there, and I wanted to get rid of a note or two, You can turn on a node on and off for that step. So the Move step grid too, that's really cool. Oh, sorry, that's a very big advantage is when I hold down notes on the step grid for Move, I can see what notes I've programmed, right? Now, I believe here, if we did the same thing, if I was like in a piano and I started wanting to record notes, let's say we were playing something, and I'm going to do this really quick. Right? And now if I hit that, it's showing me the notes, it's telling me the lengths of them. I love that it zooms too. So there's like more of a focus here, where here you touch and you just see the notes. So I don't know. I think I've covered a lot of the good differences, bad difference, similarities. You know, we've looked at it with push and push to and move. I appreciate everybody checking out the channel. Hopefully you subscribe if you want to see more content that's comparing Ableton devices and talking about Ableton workflow, because that's what I do. I talk a lot about what's going on. Plus, I really love showing off the Move. It's been a very fun experience. The last clinic I did with the public, people really enjoyed. So in the Pittsburgh area, if you ever want to join one of the free clinics that I do, we do it every first Sunday at a school in Carrick. And so, like, yeah, I can always invite you there or show you the flyer, because I do teach this stuff in real life. And again, that's with the Pittsburgh Ableton user group. But if anybody wanted to know more about some of this stuff or had deeper questions, you could find me on Discord within the Ableton Move Discord, which is public. You could find me inside the Teenage Engineering Discord, and I'm in the Pittsburgh user group Discord for Ableton as well if you had more questions about the devices and about how they function. Yeah, all right, well, I have a lot of other stuff I'm going to do today. I appreciate everybody checking out the differences between the grids. And if you have more questions, like I said, chime in, let me know, give me a heads up. So I appreciate everybody showing up, and go make really good music. And if you need any sample packs, oh, I forgot to mention, free download sample pack, meaning all the last projects I did on Move, not these ones, the ones before, are up for free right now. There's about 8 or 10 of them for download. They are all in a free Dropbox. If you want to download them, you can remix some of my music and some of the music you hear on stream. You can remix it, use it for your own stuff. If you're feeling like creatively dry, maybe, you know, me helping you write a song and have fun, maybe that would be part of it. If you want to do a remix with me or something too, let me know. But again, thanks for stopping by. Everybody, have a great day.